Thank you for joining us for this look at the best original reporting from KPBS News this week. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Coming up, Chula Vista's waterfront vision begins to take shape as work gets underway on a long-awaited major development. They escaped the Taliban, but now a year after the U.S. withdrawal, Afghan refugees face a new set of challenges adapting to life in San Diego. And leading San Diego's schools, KPBS talks with the new superintendent of San Diego Unified before a new year begins. First, a move never seen before in our country. California is on the road to saying goodbye to gas-powered cars, promising to go all electric in the years ahead. KPBS reporter John Carroll explains the historic move to deal with climate change.
The process of getting to today's vote began 2 years ago when Governor Gavin Newsom signed an executive order mandating that all vehicles sold in California must be zero emission by 2035. Now the process of phasing out gas engines begins. There are benchmarks along the way. 35% of new vehicles must be zero emission in just 4 years, 68% by 2030, and then 100% in 13 years.
I would say that there's a lot of room for improvement.
At the San Diego-based Climate Action Campaign, transportation policy advocate Corina Contreras says the move to phase out gas-powered vehicles is great, but she says there needs to be follow-through.
Quick building of infrastructure that's going to help people actually have freedom of choice, where they don't feel like they need to utilize their own vehicle.
Contreras says efforts to go green should include further development of mass transit as well. State regulators say the new rules have received very little pushback from car manufacturers. Here at the Team Kia dealership in El Cajon, General Manager Chris George says he's all for zero-emission vehicles.
Overall, I think it's important that we're responsible for the environment.
But he has several concerns.
One would be accessibility. Average price point for an EV vehicle is $62,000, out of the reach for most people. The infrastructure cannot support all these vehicles going on the road.
The state has committed money to build more EV charging stations, but George says he's skeptical that will happen fast enough. Subsidies are available to help people buy new and used EVs, but George says car companies and dealers are facing enormous costs to retool their service facilities and to train their mechanics on how to work on EVs. People will still be able to buy used gas-powered cars after 2035, but the die is now cast. Even with the inevitable challenges, the state with the largest car market in the U.S. is now moving toward a greener future. John Carroll, KPBS News.
It's been quite a week for the South Bay with the start of two big projects that will shape the region in the years to come. Work is now underway on a second border crossing in Otay Mesa. Local leaders say it's needed to speed up wait times and boost the nation's supply chain. $1.5 billion will be spent on the project over the next few years. A few miles away, valuable waterfront property is being redeveloped into what Chula Vista hopes will be a new economic engine. Jacob Ayer shows us the early work on a long-awaited project and what locals are saying about this big change.
After decades of waiting, the Harborside Park Convention Center project in Chula Vista has finally begun. It's expected to pump hundreds of millions of dollars annually into the local economy, but not everyone is sold on the project. KPBS spoke with local workers and residents and got a mixed reaction. A few say many of the new jobs will be low wage, and they worry about how the redevelopment project will increase traffic and overcrowding. Among them is Tijuana resident Oscar Ochoa, who works as a security guard in the area.
It's going to be crowded, but for us it's going to be like a huge problem because more people is going to be coming around.
Others say they're thankful for the construction, including Chula Vista resident Joe Balistreri. He's been waiting on the project for decades.
It'll infuse a lot of money into the community and business and activity and, use of the waterfront. I mean, this is great that they use the waterfront because it's just been laying here doing nothing forever.
Right now, the construction is causing a number of road closures in the immediate vicinity. And for the time being, those roads will likely stay closed. The project is expected to be completed in 2025. But Jim O'Callahan, the CEO of South County Economic Development Council, says short-term pain will translate to long-term gain. Much of the area will ultimately have new paths for cars and pedestrians alike.
Right out here, you're going to have hundreds of acres of walkable space that'll connect to the bikeway, giving ample opportunity for people to take advantage of fields that they haven't been able to use in years. Some of this was, old sites that were for refineries, power plants, and now being able to take it back as public land is pretty incredible.
Jacob Ayer, KPBS News.
And while that project is just beginning, another huge project in San Diego is ready to open. Snapdragon Stadium in Mission Valley will host its first event next weekend. Saturday, September 3rd is the debut when San Diego State football begins its season. The new venue can hold more than 30,000 people. Wave FC will also call Snapdragon home with its first match on September 17th. Local farmers earn millions of dollars growing fruit in parts of North County, but it's now at risk of being worthless. The culprit is an invasive bug that now has some of those crops under quarantine. KPBS health reporter Matt Hoffman spoke with farmers who are hoping to save their harvest.
They are normally a pretty durable fruit, but there are pests that can attack it, and that's what we're having to deal with right now.
Third-generation grower Warren Lyle has been in this position before. He owns Lyle Enterprises in Palma Valley, which has 250 acres of oranges and avocados. Back in 2002, there was an even larger infestation of Mexican fruit flies threatening his crop.
And that the quarantine lasted almost a year, and it was hard.
Lyle dodged the fruit flies 2 decades ago. Though he was in the quarantined area, his fruit was never infested. Today's outbreak is threatening a total of $300 million in local crops. Lyle says the invasive Mexican fruit flies lay their eggs inside dozens of citrus and tropical fruits. Larva then causes it to spoil.
And it rots and it's destroyed. And so it is a pest that we can't tolerate.
This latest infestation started in Valley Center. Officials say it's a small population and they've created a 77-mile quarantine area to try and eradicate them. That means any farmers inside the quarantine boundary have to treat their fruits with an organic pesticide. They also have to inspect them before they can be sold.
These pests hitchhike into our region.
Ha Deng is San Diego County's agricultural commissioner. She says state and federal ag officials are in town overseeing the quarantine and making sure fruits are being treated and cleaned. Deng has been holding town halls and talking with concerned growers.
That is going to impact the operation, it's going to increase the production costs, and as you know, that would be also high, resulting in potential cost increases for the consumers.
Deng says state officials are releasing sterile fruit flies to try and disrupt the reproductive process. They are also removing fruit and doing some spot treatments. The quarantine will run through at least June of next year, and it could go longer if the flies cannot be eradicated. Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
And here are some of the most read stories this week at kpbs.org. Carlsbad declares a local emergency as it sees a spike in collisions involving e-bikes. San Diego Mayor Todd Gloria announces his pick to move forward with a big redevelopment of the Midway District. And a deep dive into the history behind the recent violence involving drug cartels in Tijuana. Housing is so tight right now that an old motel in North County is now being converted to apartments. But should rents really cost more than bigger, more modern units in the area? KPBS North County reporter Tanya Thorne tells us about the pushback to what developers are describing as affordable.
The Vista City Council has approved the transformation of a former Motel 6 into a studio apartment building. The renovated property will include 75 studio apartments, averaging 375 square feet. The rent price will be based on market rates at the time they are rented. If construction was completed today, the rents would be around $1,400 per month, according to the property developers. Councilmember Corina Contreras voted against the project, saying the rent is anything but affordable.
What I disagree with is calling this any kind of attainable or affordable housing. Because it is not deed restricted. And essentially what this developer is doing is very modest modifications.
Contreras says brand new luxury studio apartments with more square footage are going for approximately $2 per square foot in the city of Vista. While these,
if we're looking at $1,500 per room at an average of 375 square feet, that's $4. Did I do the math right? That's $4 per square foot. That is outrageous. It is absolutely outrageous. Without a deed restriction, I can't swallow this for the community.
Contreras toured a model unit before her vote and was unimpressed. She says that for that price, she would like to see more renovations.
For someone to be paying $4 per square foot for a new paint job, 375 square feet of space where previously people were allowed to smoke, and the room hasn't been gutted, there hasn't been an attempt to mitigate that. That's a huge issue for me too.
Other concerns raised were the traffic on the busy road leading to the 78 freeway and the lack of public transportation nearby. Wardell Campbell pays $950 a month for a low-income studio apartment in Vista.
Yes, I got an excellent deal. I got lucky. Actually, I was blessed more than anything. So I'm definitely appreciative of what I do have.
Like Contreras, he doesn't think the new project will alleviate the area's affordability crisis.
$1,300 is way too much. I think maybe more reasonable price for low income, no more than $1,000, especially with the Motel 6 and the rooms are just so much smaller. So even $1,000, I feel as though is way too high. You know what I mean? I think something reasonable, maybe $700, $800 maybe for something like that.
No date has been set on when the units will be available. Tanya Thorne, KPBS News.
In the South Bay, a neighborhood park is being shut down after complaints about camping by those experiencing homelessness. Alexander Nguyen tells us more about the concerns that forced the city of Chula Vista to take action.
We all have to go somewhere.
Mama Heather has been homeless for more than 25 years, and for the past 5 months, she's been living at Harborside Park.
Have been this way for a reason, because we all lost our jobs, our homes. Some with mental problems, some without mental problems, some with drug problems, some without. It doesn't matter who they are or what they are. They came to this situation through the economy.
She's called Mama Heather because she takes care of people, making sure they have what they need. And she makes sure the park stays clean.
When I first got here, the place was a total mess.
Chula Vista Council member John McCann wants to close the park down. He says drug use and crime are making it dangerous for students at nearby Harborside Elementary.
This is not a homeless issue. This is a illegal activity, a drug use issue, and we want to make sure that we're not normalizing this for our children and protecting our most vulnerable children in the Harborside community.
But homeless advocates say it is a homeless issue.
They're going to be completely displaced.
Executive Director at Community for Hope, Sebastian Martinez, says there is no shelter in the city for people. The Chula Vista Bridge shelter is not expected to be open until the end of the year.
It's actually going to, I think, create the exact opposite of what parents are asking for, which is for the area to be safer, because these folks are then going to have to go out into residential areas because they can't congregate at this park.
Martinez says that will make it harder for service providers to help people.
And the reason why the people congregate at this park is because it's right next to the County Health and Human Services, and that's where they can get help.
There's a lot of focus on that being next to the school, but at the county building you can get access to vaccines, medicine. They can check on their EBT, they can check on the status of any kind of SSI they're getting. And so that's really why a lot of folks are here.
The City Council will vote on the resolution tonight. If passed, the park will be closed for 90 days with an option to extend the closure. It will cost the city $350,000. Alexander Nguyen, KPBS News.
And to update that story, during that meeting this week, the City Council did end up deciding to close the park. An event is in the works to connect those who are displaced with supportive services. 1 year after the U.S. pullout from Afghanistan, refugees who escaped the Taliban now have relative safety. But their transition remains uncertain and difficult, especially for Afghan women. KPBS military reporter Steve Walsh caught up with some trying to make a new life here in San Diego.
Masuma Ismailzada and her 5 sisters evacuated from Afghanistan August 30th last year. They were allowed only 1 backpack each. She takes me through their Chula Mesa home. She's embarrassed that their house is furnished mainly by donations.
Right now, when I see the newcomers, new Afghan comers, I do my best to help them because I can feel whatever they are feeling right now.
Their father died a month before. With no male relative living with them, they were virtually trapped in their home as the Taliban took over Afghanistan.
It's something like a nightmare. Maybe for the people who are living in U.S., it looks like a movie, but for us, every minute was like a horror film. We didn't know what will happen next.
Her family arrived in San Diego in January. Before they fled, she taught English literature at the local university. Occasionally, in the middle of the night now, Esmaila Zara holds virtual classes with her former students because English has been removed from the curriculum, and women are often barred from class.
They had goals, dreams, but right now they said, we do not know about our tomorrow. What should we do? They are really broken. Yeah.
She now works with the Mesa Community Health Centers, helping other recent arrivals. The transition to the U.S. is especially tough for Afghan women. Her father stressed education. One sister is a neurosurgeon, another is an architect, though many of the other women Esmaila Zara works with cannot read or write.
Some of the organizations, when they help, they say that, okay, you have to start working. But how? When they do not have any knowledge, when they do not know the language, when they do not even have that self-confidence to work.
In the hectic last days of the American presence in Afghanistan, the U.S. prioritized getting out people who had worked with the U.S. And Devin Cohn with Refugees International says the focus was on those who might qualify for special immigration visas or SIVs.
Because of the work that these women did, they were at risk by the Taliban. Yet they didn't work for the U.S. government. They weren't subcontractors for U.S. government funding. So there really was no way, and there's still very few ways for them to get to the U.S.
Sean Van Diver's group Afghan Evac formed to coordinate a range of vet groups who were working to get people out of Afghanistan. 1 year out, he's worried public attention is fading.
And what's really important is that the world doesn't stop talking about this, because as soon as the world stops talking about it, that's when we're going to see the uptick. And what we saw when Ukraine kicked off was that there was an uptick in raids on houses, in beatings.
The group supports the recently introduced Afghan Adjustment Act, which would help Afghans caught in immigration limbo. Masuma Esmailzade's sister Gulsum Ismailzadeh worked with USAID, and not directly with Americans. But it was enough to get her family on the radar for their last-minute evacuation. Glad to be safe, she's also sad that she's now part of a brain drain forced by the Taliban.
It made me sad, and it just telling me that my education was useless. And I cannot use it for my own people, for my country, so it may be useless for the time being. So that's the thing that made me disappointed and hopeless.
Without some other permanent solution, the sisters now have 2 years to make it through the backlogged immigration process. Steve Walsh, KPBS News.
And this week also marks 6 months since the start of Russia's invasion of Ukraine and the war that has no end in sight. Some of those refugees are in San Diego, where they observed their country's Independence Day thousands of miles from home. Kitty Alvarado has one of their stories.
Eugenia Brodsky has left her life in Ukraine behind, but that place is in her heart and mind every day.
I so missed home so much. I just want to open the door of my apartment and come in. I want to see everybody. And
She dreams of a day she can go back to a life she used to live. Thinking of it brings her to tears. But on the Independence Day for a country she longs to see, her heart is with the people who have survived the unimaginable.
I just remember these people, and they are all wonderful. When I stay for a while in different countries, in Sri Lanka or here, I can see people, very kind people, but I understand that I miss our people so much.
When the war broke out, her husband and her 2 little boys were on vacation. They managed to make their way to San Diego through Tijuana. That was 7 months ago. She says knowing her loved ones are so far away and in danger is tough, but their fighting spirit gives her hope.
When I see all of this kind, shiny faces, you know, I'm just proud to be part of this nation. And I start to be more brave.
And while their journey has not been easy, they've made it their mission to help families in Ukraine by holding art sales and exhibits in different cities that feature Ukrainian artists. So far, they've raised over $10,000.
Most of these artists, they are in Ukraine now, and they just place on this edge, you know, between life and death.
She says that when she sees the faces of her own 2 sons, she sees the faces of the brave Ukrainian soldiers. Their sacrifice, it fills her with emotion.
They are all sons of our nature, of our land, of our people, and of course it's hurt. It hurts so much every day. And it's like 2 feelings, pain and love. Every day I can feel it.
She says that after 31 years of independence, she finally feels like she knows what the day truly means.
I know what am I celebrating now. That this day, it's not just a day with concert and fireworks. This day, it's our pain, it's our love, it's our hope.
Kitty Alvarado, KPBS News.
Selections for the KPBS One Book, One San Diego campaign are now official. For adults, we have The Vanishing Hall by Britt Bennett. It's a New York Times bestseller. And the selection for teens is The Magic Fish, written and illustrated by Trung Lin Nguyen. And for kids, we are Water Protectors, written by Carol Lindstrom and illustrated by Michaela Godey. Go to the KPBS YouTube page to watch the announcement video with comments by the authors. KPBS will be partnering with local libraries and schools to put on some special events over the coming year. Class is back in session on Monday for San Diego Unified, our largest school district. It's also the first full year for the new superintendent. He spoke with KPBS education reporter MG Perez about this big opportunity and his vision for leading our public schools.
Dr. Lamont Jackson considers himself a spiritual man.
The spirit of Ubuntu, an African proverb, which means that I am because we are.
That proverb continues to inspire the superintendent of San Diego Unified School District, a message he's lived by even before being appointed permanently to the position last March. In our interview, he set the tone for what's to come in the new school year.
This year will be about belonging. It will be about equity. And it will be about our children thriving and our staff thriving so that we can become what we have set out to do, and that is the best public school system across the nation.
San Diego Unified is second in size to the Los Angeles School District, with many of the same big city issues, starting with the continuing COVID crisis.
We have recently, as you know, moved away from a district-wide mask mandate to really focus on what's happening at our schools. We realize that a lot of data is able to be captured at our school sites.
So individual schools could reinstate masks or take other COVID precautions based on a localized outbreak of cases rather than a mandate for the entire district. Then there is the threat of the monkeypox virus. There will be special precautions for students in athletics.
For example, our mats clean for wrestlers, because we know that this is something that is transmitted through close contact, the sharing of towels and materials like that.
On the matter of the new California late start law, requiring middle schools to begin at 8 a.m. or later and high schools no earlier than 8:30 a.m. Dr. Jackson says the district has a school year worth of data from a pilot program started in 2021.
We've learned a great deal from transportation to what this meant for our parents who have multiple drop-off points when they have multiple children in the family. And I think we're poised
to provide support for students before and after school as families adjust their routines. The district also has more student representation on the school board this year. Zachary Patterson, who helped create the student position, graduated in June and has been replaced by 2 new students who are continuing the legacy.
Really pushing at this idea that Trustee Patterson pushed on, and that's student voice. And really having students at the table and really hearing from them.
Jackson has been with the district more than 30 years as a teacher and coach, a principal, human resources director, and a product of San Diego Unified, completing 12 years of his education in district schools. He is also a dedicated father and shared a very personal story of growth when his son decided to pursue a college scholarship in opera and not athletics.
It was all of him who said that he was interested in pursuing choir and that he was moving away from athletics, which is probably what I was pushing him into doing. And so if there's a message for parents is we need to get out of the way of our students and let them find their voice, because magic will happen. Sorry, I get a little choked up.
The superintendent, who is still teaching. MG Perez, KPBS News.
And a reminder that you can find our stories on the KPBS YouTube page. We also live stream KPBS Evening Edition, weeknights at 5. And we hope that you enjoyed this look at KPBS News this week. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Thanks for joining us.